All right. Episode 4 of the San Franco World Cup podcast is here. I am back from vacation, my travels in the Northeast. I am still alive, which is good, and had a blast. So ready to go full force here on episode 4. Josh Bagriansky joining me once again. Josh, you've been able to keep a very close eye on these World Cup games. I actually did pretty well. Phone service out there in Delaware actually was pretty good at the Firefly Festival, so we were actually able to watch some games on cell phones because one of my buddies has unlimited data. So I've done pretty well keeping up with it. They also had a tent sponsored by the Dogfish Head Brewery that had a bunch of TVs on it to watch games. So been able to keep up with everything, but so far, I guess, if you could, in a few words, what have been your summations of the World Cup just so far?
Oh, it's been amazing. Unpredictable at every turn. We've got goals aplenty. The stars are stepping up. Just look what Lionel Messi did once again today for Argentina. You know, we've got some Cinderella stories. Costa Rica has been as good as anyone in the tournament. Some of the favorites crashing out. You know, we want to talk about Spain, obviously, is your best example of that. So it's been an interesting tournament. It's had about it all. You know, Luis Suarez still biting people. It's been a great tournament, great for the casual fan, and I think that's one of the reasons we've seen such a surge in interest, particularly for this World Cup, is that it's been so competitive and unpredictable from start to finish.
Yeah, and we're mainly going to focus on the U.S. in today's edition of the podcast, both the very disappointing draw against Portugal and what to look forward to in tomorrow's game against Germany. But we'll start with just some kind of news and notes from around the tournament. Obviously, you mentioned Luis Suarez, so we'll start there. Just absolutely disgusting what he did yet again, biting a player on the field for the third time in his career. The first time he did it was when he was playing for Ajax in Amsterdam in the Dutch league. The second time was, I believe, a little over a year ago, when he bit Branislav Ivanovic of Chelsea while he was playing for Liverpool, and that resulted in a 10-game suspension. And now FIFA's got a decision to make because it's pretty clear. You could see the bite marks on Chiellini's shoulder, despite Ramirez, the Uruguayan player, trying to cover up the sleeve when Chiellini pulled his shoulder out, and Ramirez was like, "Put your shirt back on." But no, the bite marks were definitely there, and this is just become sort of Suarez's go-to move, I guess.
I guess this is just a crazy dude, man. Because he really is. In terms of just a footballer,
he's
aside
so
from the antics,
good.
about as perfect as it gets. You know, he's a team player. He works hard for 90 minutes. He can set up goals. He can score goals. He's always fit, but he keeps biting people, which of course was going to result in a lengthy suspension. And if you've got a guy that's, likely to miss 8 to 10 games at any time for some ridiculous antics such as this, it makes him a lot less valuable. And I don't. It's really hard to even explain, that he would do it a third time, little less a second time. But clearly, this is, as you said, his go-to move when he gets a little overly emotional, maybe a little overly passionate, and he's going to pay the price, and most importantly, his team is going to pay the price. Uruguay without their top player for the rest of the World Cup.
Yeah, and in one of the best pieces of ambush marketing I've seen in a long time, Snickers jumped on this immediately on Twitter, and they tweeted to Luis Suarez, like actually tagged him in the post. They said, next time just eat a Snickers, and then they posted a picture that said, "Snickers more satisfying than Italian," which is just absolutely brilliant. But it's just unfortunate that what Suarez, how good of a player he is, and really one of those once-in-a-lifetime type talents, and he just can't keep himself from doing this. He just bites another player, and I strongly doubt that we'll see him against Colombia when they play on Saturday. So that's going to be unfortunate because you want to see stars in the World Cup, and he's not going to be there.
Yeah, and the worst part about it, as I mentioned, is that he's essentially ruined any chance for Uruguay to make a similar run as they did deep into the last tournament. I think that he's pretty much cost his team any chance of that happening.
Yeah, no question about it. Some other news around the World Cup: Mexico and Croatia. Mexico was able to get a win over Croatia, eliminating them and ensuring that Mexico will take on the Netherlands in the knockout round, which Should be a pretty good game. This Mexico team has shown no fear in going forward, and obviously we've seen what the Netherlands have been able to do, winning their group by winning all 3 games in what many people thought was the real group of death outside of the U.S. and Portugal and Germany. So a very strong Netherlands team there. Brazil will be taking on Chile in the round of 16. Also, as we found out yesterday, Colombia, as we mentioned, will take on Uruguay, while Greece will take on Costa Rica. And that Greek team, I tell you what, that game against Ivory Coast, one of the more exciting games of the group stage.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Came down to the last second. A controversial penalty given to Greece with about a minute left in stoppage time. They had to win the match to go through, and they converted the penalty to do so. Kind of a controversial call in that Samaras actually kicked his own foot before he fell.
Well, I see what you're saying there, but he also, when he dragged his foot back to shoot, he caught his foot on the Ivorian player's thigh.
Correct. I think you have to give that. I've heard a lot of talk both ways, but when you see the angle where, as you say, there's little contact before he comes forward to kick the ball, I think you have to give that penalty. But just gutted for the Ivorians because one of my favorite teams to watch, and they were right there and were unable to do it.
Yeah, and Giorgio Samaras for Greece, a guy who's sort of been an enigma, a player that's got all the talent in the world but doesn't always seem interested in the game. The weight of an entire nation on his shoulders. Greece had never been in the knockout round of a World Cup, and he steps up with just so much pressure with that penalty, slots it home as cool as you like. So Greece will be taking on Costa Rica in a game that I guarantee you nobody had in their World Cup pool. So that'll be one to watch for sure.
Absolutely. And Costa Rica's been great too.
They really have been. And, guys like Joel Campbell, who's an Arsenal player, as you know, and just that whole team has looked very, very good. So we will look forward to that game. Later on today, Group E will sort itself out. Earlier today, Group F did. Argentina won and Nigeria came in second. So we will now look to see who will be playing Argentina and who will be playing Nigeria. It's looking a lot to me like France is going to end up playing Nigeria in that 1-2 matchup there. In terms of the second seed, Ecuador will play France while Switzerland will play Honduras. Ecuador right now on 3 points with a goal differential of 0. Switzerland on 3 points with a goal differential of -2. And, Honduras, some miracle could happen where they overturn a -4 goal differential and beat Switzerland while Ecuador loses to France. But that's not looking too good. So it's looking like it'll come down to maybe Ecuador or Switzerland. Ecuador probably, as much as I want to say that they will get this result, France has looked very good. They don't look like they're going to take their foot off the gas. So it's going to take a lot for Ecuador to advance instead of Switzerland.
Absolutely. And France have been fun to watch because they really have something to prove in this World Cup after the disaster from 2010 in South Africa. They've been one of the best teams in the tournament. It's been an interesting group, though. I thought the Ecuador-Honduras match was very, very an extremely entertaining, competitive game. Honduras has represented well, I think, for CONCACAF, even though they, as you said, they probably won't go through. But the France game was to be expected, losing 3-0, but they were very competitive against Ecuador. That was a match that probably could have gone either way, and maybe they can come out and get a good result today against the Swiss, but it's going to be interesting to see who gets that second spot, as you mentioned, just depending on how things shake out.
Yeah, what would be waiting for them is a round of 16 game against Argentina. So enjoy that. Yeah. Enjoy that, for the team that gets through. Now it's time to shift focus here. We will be talking exclusively about the United States from here on out, and we will start by talking about the Portugal game. Portugal obviously starts with the goal from Nani thanks to a just woeful clearance by Jeff Cameron, and the ball just settles right to Nani, and he's able to slot that home. But the United, and so it was 1-0 going into halftime for Portugal, and then a guy who you and I both think could end up being the player of the tournament for the United States, Jermaine Jones, just unleashes a thunderbolt of a shot to equalize that game for the United States. And then despite Michael Bradley's best efforts to screw it up, the United States were able to equalize, or able to take the lead off of Bradley's shot being deflected out wide, crossing in, and Dempsey scoring it with his chest. And at that point, it looked like the United States were going to be able to go ahead and lock up their spot in the round of 16. But again, Michael Bradley just with a woeful giving away of possession in his own half, allowing Cristiano Ronaldo to streak down the side and send in one of the best crosses I've ever seen to Varela, who heads it home literally on one of the last touches of the ball of the game. And Portugal were able to earn the 2-2 draw. It was unfortunate for the United States. And other than Jeff Cameron, Michael Bradley just continues to play awful in this World Cup.
Yeah, he's been quite poor, and to be honest, I'm a bit impressed that we've been able to score 4 goals, and especially in that Portugal match, create a myriad of opportunities, despite perhaps our best playmaking midfielder not being involved. But you talk about that last goal, and basically it was a minute of madness where we couldn't have been more poor at killing the clock. It's all started with DeAndre Yedlin not holding the ball at the corner flag when he was set up perfectly to do so. Instead, he loses it out for a throw-in. Then you also have to look at the poor clearance from Jeff Cameron that led to Bradley giving the ball away in the first place. He should not be clearing that ball into the middle of the field. It should be going out for a throw-in or just going route one, even if it goes straight back to their goalkeeper. That leads to the mistake from Michael Bradley, which was egregious for particularly a player of his caliber. A poor first touch, but then also to be muscled off the ball so easily. And that, it's frustrating. The only way that Portugal should be scoring in that situation is a 1 in a million long ball into the box. There's a scramble and they score. But instead, since we lose the ball in their half, right in the middle of the field, we have 3 or 4 guys pushed forward, and Ronaldo is suddenly 1v1 on the flank with DeMarcus Beasley,
which you never want. And I had nightmares about that all year, until when we found out that this was going to be a game. That was the first thing that popped in my head was Ronaldo and Beasley. And it ends up being what cost the United States 3 points.
And it's frustrating because I thought we did a magnificent job on him the entire match. And clearly Ronaldo is not 100%. But we literally, they could not have asked for a better opportunity to create a chance than they had in that final minute of stoppage time. And then obviously the cross comes in. Jeff Cameron has to pick up his mark, which I don't understand because obviously they're going to be throwing bodies into the box in that situation. Then you wonder if maybe Tim Howard could have made a better effort at it. I mean, it was really, aside from Bradley's egregious error, which I know it was probably the worst of them all, considering he's supposed to be our guy to hold the ball there and not give it away as he did. But it was really a team breakdown over the last minute, a complete failure in understanding the situation and scenario. I think our guys just got a little bit excited and 4 or 5 lapses in judgment, and suddenly it's 2-2. So it's a devastating draw, but it could end up being a great result for us depending on what happens on Thursday.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at it, and aside from the 2 mistakes that really caused the 2 goals for Portugal, it was one of the better games I've seen the United States play in a long time. Constantly on the front foot, controlling the game. Portugal's a team that you would never expect to be one to just sit back and wait for the counterattack. But that's what they did because the United States was on the front foot the whole game. Again, Jermaine Jones played an absolutely flawless game, which is what he's been doing this tournament. And it's just unfortunate that the United States weren't able to get the result out of this game because they clearly deserved it.
That's as good a 90 minutes as I've ever seen a U.S. team play. We dominated a world-class side. Basically, I'd say, the first 15 minutes we're a little bit under the gun, but we dominated them the rest of the first half. We completely controlled the second half, and that's why it's so frustrating to only come out with a point. And you can even see the reaction of the Portuguese. I mean, their coaching staff almost looked like they felt a bit sorry for us after they scored that goal because they know that even if they're mathematically still in it, they have to make up 5 goals of goal difference, and it was a game we deserved to win. So that made it all the more frustrating. But on the other hand, and I'm trying to look at it this way as a U.S. fan, is if you had told me before the Ghana match that we were going to have 4 points after our first 2 fixtures, I'd be thrilled. So, 538, as we discussed we've talked a lot about their mathematical projections. They have 76% chance for the U.S. to go through, and there are a million scenarios tomorrow. Hopefully, we can just win or draw. But it's still looking good for us to go through. So we may still look back at this as a very good point, despite the way we should have had all max points from the match.
Yeah, and look, I think Germany's going to put the foot down and really go for this game. I don't see them letting up any way possible. So the United States may have to change their shape a little bit. But, the U.S. has also proven that they can play a little bit of a defensive style if they need to. So I think that obviously you don't want to be looking at the other result, which is why FIFA has scheduled, all of the final group games at the same time. But, you've obviously got to hope that Portugal, maybe Portugal gets a 1-0 win over Ghana, and that puts the United States through regardless of what happens in their game. Barring, the United States losing like 4-0 to Germany. But.
Yeah, even if we don't win, it's still a good chance we go through. I mean, obviously they could draw. I think it's pretty much a toss-up in terms of who wins that match. And even if Ghana is to make up the goal difference, Ghana, of course, at -1, us at +1, they have the best chance to catch us.
Yep.
But if we finish even with them, we currently hold the next tiebreaker, which is goal scored. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, it basically all comes down to math if we don't get the result and that someone comes up with 3 points from the other match. But still in a very good position. You mentioned our shapes, Tim. I think that the 4-2-3-1, and we talked a bit about this before the Cup. I think the 4-2-3-1 is our best formation, aside from the fact that it's the formation where we can build from the back and focus on our defense first. But also, I think when you crowd that midfield, it's easier for us to possess the ball. When we play that diamond, the midfield four gets a bit stretched. And I think we saw that in the Ghana game. We had a lot of trouble stringing passes together. The Portugal game was very different. We were able to hold on to the ball quite a bit. And the main reason for that was we have packed the midfield with 5 midfielders. We simply had more players in the same vicinity. So in terms of changing the shape against Germany, I think I'd like us to stay with exactly what we did. Maybe a bit more of a defensive mindset, but in terms of our shape, I'm cool with that 4-2-3-1. I thought it worked out very well.
Yeah, and in terms of, let's go ahead and throw maybe some predictions out for tomorrow. I'll go ahead and say I'm going to call Ghana and Portugal a 2-1 win for Ghana. So that would move their goal differential to 0. And I'm going to I'm going to change that. I'm going to call a 2-2 draw in Ghana-Portugal and a 3-1 win for Germany over the United States. So,
sounds good.
Regardless of what happened, a draw for Ghana-Portugal doesn't do anything for either side. That guarantees the United States to get through. And I think Germany is going to try and make an example of the United States. So I'm going to call that a 3-1 win for Germany.
It could go either way. I do agree with you that I think us going through is probably going to depend on that other result. Germany need to win the match. As you said, they'll have something to prove after not putting their best foot forward against Ghana. I do kind of hope, I don't know if this will happen, but, with us having such a German connection that they won't forcefully try to put us out of the tournament. If it's coming down to goal difference in the last 10, 15 minutes and they have the match wrapped up, I'd like to believe that maybe they won't, that their goal is for them to go through and they'd be more than happy for us to go through as well. But as you said, I think it's going to come down to that other fixture, what's going to happen with Portugal and Ghana. But who knows? Maybe we can get a draw with the way we played against Portugal. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility we could win the match. So, we're going to have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. You never know what you're going to get from this U.S. team. And, with that shown in the first 2 games, we were pretty poor against Ghana, but we far managed to get the win. We were excellent against Portugal. We make a couple of bad mistakes and only have a point to show for it. So it's really hard to say which U.S. team is going to take the pitch, but hopefully we can take care of our own business and not have to worry about that other match.
Right, and if the United States does get through, it looks like it'll be a round of 16 match against Belgium. Unless the United States is able to go out and beat Germany, then, all bets are off there, and it could be Algeria or Russia. But I really think that the United States feel like they're in a good position. And, we'll see what happens tomorrow, but hopefully we're back here in a couple of days talking about a U.S. round of 16 fixture. But that'll wrap up this condensed edition of the Sam Franco World Cup podcast. Josh, thank you again so much for joining me, and hopefully we will be back and in a very positive mood in a couple of days.
I hope so, man. If I'm not, I don't. If we don't go through, I guess I'll watch the rest of the World Cup so I can do the podcast with you. But goodness, it's gonna be tough to watch the rest of the tournament without the U.S. If that happens, when you consider just how close we were to going through.
Well, that's super generous of you. Our listeners thank you for that, and yes, we thank them for listening. So for Josh Bagriansky, I'm Sam Franco. Thanks for listening, and we will be back in a couple days with episode 5 of the Sam Franco World Cup podcast. Let's go, Yanks!